Value. If we ask you, what is the most valuable thing in the world? How would you answer it?
Isn't it a very open-ended question? Many answers can be given. Well, if we ask this question to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, how would he answer? He states the following in a hadith: By Allah, if a single person is guided by Allah through you, it is better than anything on which the sun rises and sets. The most valuable thing in the world has happened hundreds of times recently. Hundreds of people who went to Qatar for the World Cup were introduced to Islam and decided to become Muslims. Just think about it. We are talking about hundreds of people with different nationalities, different languages, different colors, different lives and cultures. One wonders, what kind of atmosphere is there now? What was done to explain Islam? Let's have a look at what has happened so far and how this event is affecting the Islamic world, that is, us. Thousands of people from all over the world are flocking to a Muslim country right now. Qatar authorities thought that it was the right opportunity to break the prejudice of Islamophobia and to explain Islam better. So they took very important steps. I was really surprised when I heard it. For example, when you look at the streets, you see that verses of the Quran and hadith of our Prophet ﷺ are written on the boards in 8 different languages. The Prophet ﷺ says, "He who is not merciful to others will not be treated mercifully." Another board has the following hadith: "Anybody who believes in Allah and the last day shouldn't harm his neighbor, and anybody who believes in Allah and the last day should entertain his guest generously, and anybody who believes in Allah and the last day should talk what is good or should keep quiet." Just think about it. Maybe a person has heard many false information about Islam throughout his life. Don't you think his perspective on Islam would change after seeing these? What else? For example, this photo. Suppose that you came here as well and you're about to sit in your seat in the stand with excitement just before the start of the match, and you see these bags on your seat. They have put pamphlets explaining Islam, the Quran, in 8 different languages, and they are put on every seat in this stand. Don't you think it's a great step to spark an interest in people? Imagine how beneficial it could be. For example, what you see now is a QR code. I don't know if it will open if you scan it from the screen with your phone now, but they are found on the streets and at the entrances of mosques. Someone who knows very little about Islam or someone who knows wrong things about our religion can access content that gives information about Islam in more than 30 languages by scanning this QR code. But suppose that a person didn't want to scan it, or he had special questions he wanted to ask. They solved it like this. 2,000 men and women who speak many languages and who are trained in this field were assigned for this. Anyone who wants can talk to them and ask their questions. In other words, they are working very hard to save the eternal life of the people who went there by enabling them to get to know about Islam more closely and away from prejudices. I have a friend who went to Qatar to give dawah, and he's among these 2,000 people. He says that mosques are packed with tourists, and while they are visiting the mosques, they are being informed about Islam. In some dawah spots, there are VR sets that show the tourists how life was at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Of course, since a big organization such as the World Cup is in question, the things that are happening there are discussed and broadcast in many different places. You must have seen this image. Morgan Freeman's dialogue with the young man reading the Quran at the opening ceremony of the World Cup was talked about a lot. Scenes to be remembered in the world history took place, and as we said at the beginning, hundreds of people accepted Islam. Hundreds of people who were able to realize the purpose of life and find the truth. Of course, it's just the beginning. Along with these, seeds of Islam have been planted in the hearts of thousands of people and also in the hearts of those who followed these events on the internet. Some of those seeds will sprout in the future, inshallah. Of course, it should not be forgotten that Qatar, like every other state, along with the things that they are doing right, might be doing some things wrong as well. What a fair person should do is to evaluate the right and wrong things separately. While we call the wrong things wrong, we should also appreciate if there is something good. We should say, what can I take from this? There's a well-known saying, history repeats itself. That is, it's not the first time in history that some people get to know Islam well and they become Muslims in multitudes because of it. Numerous examples of it have been seen throughout the 1400-year history of Islam. So, what exactly is the secret of it? Why do such things happen in some periods and not in others? I'll quote one statement and tell you one historical incident to make you find the answer. All of us know Ali radiallahu anhu. He is one of the closest companions and cousin of our Prophet ﷺ. There's an interesting incident he experienced which could be a scene of a movie. During a war, he threw an enemy to the ground. And just as he was about to kill him with the sword, the disbeliever enemy spits at his face. Ali radiallahu anh stops and refuses to kill him. Normally, you would expect him to kill the enemy more violently. The enemy was surprised at it and asked, "Why didn't you kill me?" He answered, "I was going to kill you for the sake of Allah. But when you spat at me, I became angry. My ikhlas, my sincerity was harmed because now my nafs, my ego, was involved in it. That's why I didn't kill you." The enemy said, "My goal was to make you enraged so that you would kill me quickly. Since your religion is so pure, it is the true religion." And he becomes Muslim. It's really strange. Shall we connect this incident with our topic? You might be thinking to yourself, good things are done so that some people can get to know Islam well and become a Muslim. So what can I do to become a part of it? I'm someone who lives an ordinary life, who sits at home or goes to work or school. What can I do to be a means of these good deeds? I'm giving you the answer. You don't need to do much. You don't have to buy a ticket and go to another country and try to explain something to someone all day long, know everything, etc. You don't have to do all of these things. All you have to do is this. Practice Islam with your actions and represent your religion in the way you carry yourself. Reflect Islam like a mirror in your daily life. Bediüzzaman Said Nursi, one of the great scholars of Islamic history, says this in one of his speeches. If we show true Islam and the honesty and truthfulness that befits Islam, the non-Muslims will enter Islam in huge groups. As if he answers the question of how Islam can spread to the world. To show true Islam and the truthfulness that is worthy of Islam. That is the secret. We say things with our tongues and we say things with our attitudes and actions. Which one is more effective? Attitudes and actions, right? For example, if a father who smokes says, "Son, don't smoke," to what extent can he affect his son? Or if someone who doesn't make salah says, "Salah is a very good thing, you must definitely perform it." It will be funny if the person he is talking to knows that he doesn't perform his prayers, right? Because his actions don't match what he does. Islam is an abstract thing, just like notions such as compassion, authority, or confidence. When we say compassion, our mothers come to our minds. When we say authority, confidence, we remember our fathers, so to say. Just like these, Islam is also an abstract term. In order to make sense of it, in order to make it tangible, people naturally look at Muslims. We cannot escape from this responsibility. We cannot say, "Don't look at Muslims, look at Islam." No, this is escaping from responsibility. If we have this privilege of being on the right path, we must carry the burden that comes with it, and that is to embody Islam. If you do things that are against Islamic morals like nepotism, lying, backbiting, and hypocrisy, how much impact can you have on people? No matter how many minutes you explain the beauty of Islam, it won't affect people if you don't represent it with your deeds and actions. We have to practice Islam both when we're alone and when we're with others. We can represent Islam through the smallest things to the biggest ones in daily life. For example, from helping to carry the belongings of an elderly person we saw on the street, to defending the rights of our coworker when we think there's an injustice. Sometimes we see on the internet, someone loses his wallet, his money, and another person finds it and gives it to its owner. It is hard to come across such people nowadays, isn't it? But if you do it and they ask you, "Why did you do that?" You could have kept it and no one would have known it. You can answer, "I did it so because of my religion." Can you imagine how much influence it will have on the other person? There's a concept we call Sha'air al-Islami. It means signs of Islam, symbols of Islam. For example, what does a person who sees a minaret say? There is a place here that belongs to Muslims, right? Adhan, kufi, prayer rug, hijab, bismillah, beard, salam, Eids, or the month of Ramadan, for example. Madrasas and religious buildings are the signs of Islam. They are Sha'air al-Islami. Those who look at them remember something about Islam. Now think about it. Are you someone who proclaims Sha'air al-Islami, tries to spread them and practices them with your attitudes and actions? That's what Towards Eternity exists for. At the moment, we are declaring Islamic symbols both on YouTube and in our madrasa. We are trying to do it with adhan, prayer, tasbihat, and trying to keep them alive. If you and I don't practice it, we will be held responsible. Look around you. Haram things spread easily on social media, on the internet, everywhere. The streets are full of crimes, foul words, and immorality. People easily lie to one another, gossip and slander. Tendency to fraud, theft, bribe, consume riba is increasing. Whatever Allah forbids is encouraged. In that case, shouldn't we keep our religion alive and spread Islamic symbols to a greater extent? Finally, I want to quote a hadith. Our Prophet ﷺ says, "The best of you are those believers who remind people of Allah Azza wa Jal when they are seen." The one who reminds people of Allah when they are seen. Now think about it, my dear brother, sister. What do you remind people of when you are seen? Do you remind people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger ﷺ, or the things that are just the opposite?
Assalamualaikum saudara-saudaraku. 98% penonton kita termasuk video ini belum mensubscribe channel ini. Seperti yang kalian tahu, kita adalah sebuah organisasi non-profit dan kami tidak memonetize video-video kami. Jadi satu-satunya alasan kami meminta kalian untuk mensubscribe adalah untuk menyebarkan kebenaran. Mungkin terasa tidak berpengaruh, tapi insya Allah mungkin bisa menjadi sarana petunjuk untuk banyak orang. Nah, silakan klik tombol subscribe dan mari berjalan bersama menuju keabadian.